It's The Current. I'm Gannon, here in the studio with a band that came a long way to be here today, all the way from Iceland. Got three members of Monsters and Men, joined by Nana, Brynjar, and Ragnar. How you guys doing?
Great. Yeah.
How are you?
Welcome back to town. Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. It's been a little while since we've seen you in here in the studio. 6 years, I believe.
Yeah.
2019 is the last time.
2019, yeah.
How are you spending your 2 days in Minnesota?
Well, I have big plans. I'm going to Mall of America.
Oh, there you go. Have you ever been?
Yes, Ragnar has been.
I have been, yeah. I went to the roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which the SpongeBob, the big vertical
I'm not
one?
sure. I think I blacked out of. I'm kind of afraid of roller coasters.
Okay.
So I just kind of blacked out. I'm probably not going with you.
No. It was traumatic.
Yeah, it was traumatic.
Well, glad you're getting to see the sights while you're here.
Thank you.
I feel like there's some kinship between Minnesota and Iceland in a way. You know, it's like the Icelandic soccer team has the skull chant, just like our football team does here, the Vikings.
Oh,
I don't know if you were aware of that, but
I was not.
The Minnesota Vikings are, of course, here.
yeah. I think we technically did it second, but
I think we also did not do it first.
oh, really?
I'm pretty sure we stole it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's the Viking way.
That's true.
Right.
That is the Viking way.
Pillaging way.
The show last night, I was there at the Palace Theater. You're doing 2 nights here. It seems like the energy was high. Do you feel like a special, sense of home when you're in somewhere like this? Is there an extra connection between Iceland and Minnesota?
I mean, I feel like didn't a lot of Icelanders come to Minnesota? Like when we back in the day.
Yeah, one back in the day.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like the Western Iceland.
Oh, yeah. Like in the early, like, industrial era in Iceland, there was like, I think people like moved here.
Yeah, but it's cold like home.
Yeah, it's cold like
It's
home.
the same temperature.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
When we got out of the venue yesterday after soundcheck, we talked about it was like Icelandic weather.
Yeah, cold, freezing. Yeah.
Freezing, and
Finally
it's
got
nice.
to wear my big jacket.
Yeah, he's been carrying this huge jacket.
Yeah.
Just
I
waiting to use it.
insulated, kind of takes up half his suitcase.
Yeah. Then I finally got it out. And now I have nothing in my suitcase.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, like I said, it's been a while, right? 6 years ago was the last record, Fever Dream, and this was the last time you were here. What was it, you're back out with a new album, All Is Love and Pain and the Mouse Parade. What made now feel like the right time to get back in the studio and put together a new Monsters and Men record?
I mean, we were kind of working on this album on and off for those 6 years. Just kind of, this record is very much coming from a place of like, oh, now we feel like we have something to say, and now we need to take like a little breather from it. So we didn't have like a time stamp on it. It was very, in a lot of ways, it was a very free experience for us. We didn't have like a record label that was like, oh, where's the record? Mm-hmm. It was pretty cool.
We kind of had to manage it ourselves, kind of just, figuring out when we wanted to, meet up, and I think we just waited until we were kind of excited. I think that was the the key to it.
Yeah, we found like, not that we had kind of lost the joy of playing together, but like it was like rediscovering it. And like I feel like that was a huge part of making this album, was just like rediscovering like being in a band and like
Well, as of this year, you've been together 15 years now, I think, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
How do you find that spark again? Each album cycle, I'm sure it's a different. Like you said, you want to find something to say. Where did that come from for you guys when you got into the studio for this record?
Excuse me. I think it comes with just time and not forcing things. I think that's a big thing, not forcing it, and kind of just listening to each other and giving each other
we
space.
all kind of went off and did our own thing, for a little bit, and just like lived life a little bit, and I think it's really nice now. I can feel the energy in the group where it's like people are just excited to be together, which is nice. And we've toured so much together. We've spent so much time together and been through like everything together, and like just grown up together.
Together.
Together. No, but it's like, it is nice to kind of then, people kind of ventured off, did other things, and then we came back together.
And there's really, especially on the new record, there's a really familial feel to a lot of these songs, right? Like Ordinary Creature, you're kind of got this feeling of coming home. How do you cultivate that feeling when you're together recording and writing?
I think it's just how it felt. We kind of, this album felt a little bit like, just like how we felt on the first album a bit. Just like us, playing together, creating something.
Yeah.
So I think because of that feeling got captured and, is in the songs.
Yeah, and also like we produced everything ourselves and had our friend Bjarni Þór Jensson recording everything with us. So it was just like friends in the studio.
Yeah, and we've known him since we were 9, some of us. Yeah. So like we've been friends forever. So it was like inviting people that we felt really, really, cozy with, and creating that kind of vibe within the studio.
Never too serious of a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's the current Gannon here with 3 members of Monster Men, joined by Ragnar, Brynjar, and Nanna, talking about the new album, All Is Love and Pain and the Mouse Parade. That album title is such a thesis statement. It's so, it conveys such imagery. What is the Mouse Parade to you guys?
I mean, the Mouse Parade it's us, I guess, and it's also just like the idea of community and like kind of this, right?
Yeah.
Like that is kind of where that title comes from. And it's from a song on the record called Mouse Parade. And there are these two songs that are connected, The Block and The Mouse Parade. And The Block is from a very human perspective, and it's a bit isolating and a bit like, serious maybe. And then there's Mouse Parade, which is what happens kind of underneath the floorboards. And you have this community of mice, and they have like their own history and their stories and their, love and pain, and kind of like in a lot of ways bigger than what the person upstairs is dealing with in a way, but also it's all the same. It's like, that is kind of the idea. Yeah.
And love and pain, right? There's like this feeling of duality. I feel like that comes up a lot on this record and also on your past albums as well. This like Tuna in a Can, for example, one of the songs that I really connected with on this new record. It's got these really heavy lyrics, but there's like a bounciness to it, especially when you played it live at the Palace Theater. Like, how intentional is that to get that sort of balance of the love and the pain, sound and the lyrics?
I mean, I think it's just the kind of the way our brain thinks about things. I think it's like exploring that gray area in between. Not that everything is so literal.
Or like, everything isn't just one thing. There's always like a...
Yeah,
and also just the contrasting elements of like like serious lyrics and like a pretty cheery song. Like, I think we've always been very, very fond of that. I mean, like just like Little Talks. So like sounds like a cheery song, but it's then you listen to the lyrics and it's a bit more serious.
Bit sad.
I feel like that's like a textbook example of one of those songs where you hear it for the first time and you're like, oh, that's so fun, and then you sit with the lyric sheet. I remember doing that when I first heard that song. Right, I sit with the lyrics and it's like, oh, yeah, this sits a little different. Which is a cool feeling, I feel like.
It is a nice feeling. I think it's like how most things are. Like even like a funeral is often very fun. And like you laugh and you cry.
Like it's like beautiful. You're celebrating something, but it's also the end of something, and so like it's
it's quite a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, and there's a beauty. There's beauty in a funeral, like
And it was cool to see sort of that duality reflected back. You played the Palace Theater last night, and I looked around and I see people closing their eyes, very pensive, sitting with the music around me, and others, parents and children.
Yeah.
Laughing, feeling this joy. How do you approach your live show to like, I guess sort of how do you craft a set list to move between those feelings so seamlessly? Because I felt like that happened in the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if it's more difficult but more fun to make set lists the more songs you have. Like when we started out, it was just like, that's the songs.
I mean, it's just like, here we have these 11 songs or whatever it was, and then like you just play them and bye. We don't have any more.
But I think it's like just a trial and error. We try a bunch of things out, then we see how like the songs flow into each other, and we, just like it's similar to when you like figure out the track list for an album. Like, how do you want the experience to be, and you approach it that way, and just kind of like if something didn't work the day before, you try to switch something around, and I think we have a good set list going on right now. Yeah. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Current. Gannon here with 3 members of Monsters of Men. Came all the way from Iceland to play 2 shows at the Palace Theater this weekend. Sort of talking about that show right now. You talked about having more songs makes it more fun to put together a set list. It's been, like we said, 15 years since that first record, or it will be 15 years next year, since My Head is an Animal. How has your relationship with those songs changed in that time since then? And how do you sort of lean into it, I suppose, with the new songs in the set as well?
Yeah, it is, because when we put out our first album 15 years ago, we're 20-something, we're like kids. And, performing them now, it is funny, like you have this, you kind of travel back and you're like, we were performing these lyrics, and I mean, it is a time capsule, and that is the very cool thing. But we are kind of figuring out how to like make it sense for us now, because time has passed and we've all changed very much, and with every album we we like change, we like developing our sound and like seeing what makes us excited for the next chapter. So
it does help, like when you play them live to see people responding, and and you feel almost like with the new songs, I'm more performing them for myself, and then for these songs it's more for them. And if we were doing like an old song in this studio, it would be different, because that's like, but you feed off the energy as well, of the crowd.
Something super different on this record, the song Fruit Bat. You played that one here in the studio, and you played that at the show. It's the longest song you've put out, more than 8 minutes, got this beautiful long instrumental passage. How does that song sort of serve the narrative of the Mouse Parade, and how did that come together?
I mean, there was something like, I remember Arnar bringing like that initial piano riff and chord progression. We just started playing it in the studio, and we started just like humming along, and it kind of just...
It like grabbed everyone immediately.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful part that he came up with, and it just grabbed everyone, and it just kind of happened.
Yeah, it was a very natural thing for
1 minute, it was just a song. That's what everyone says, right?
No.
It took forever,
It took a while. Yeah. It changed and that end part too, like that kind of developed, and we just like, I think what happened with that song is that we had this feeling of like, we really just enjoyed playing it, and when we were recording it, we were all just like sitting in a room together, and we had our friend Josh Kaufman come over. And he was in the room with us as well. And then it was just kind of feeding off that energy of like just listening to each other and like playing into the room. And
we had no like decision on how long it was supposed to be. It was just we just feeling? Played it, and that was the feeling. And we listened back, and it was just like, yeah, cool.
How did you connect with Josh Kaufman from Bonnie Light Horseman? I know he worked on a couple of songs on the record. How did that come about, and what did he sort of bring to the table?
I met him through my solo project. I made an album, it came out in 2023, and he was a part of that album. So I like went up to upstate New York, and he was working from this studio called Dreamland, and we recorded from there. And then it was we just clicked, and he's just like a really brilliant producer and a guy. So like we thought we'd bring him into our world for a little bit.
And we wanted to kind of like, because he's such a good player, and he's such like a free-flowing kind of guy, and we wanted like to do more of that on the album. So also just to get us like kind of in a room more together, get a guy like that, you know, and he was playing with us, and it was really, really fun.
Yeah, he had because also we had been like recording for a while, and it was kind of a bit like stagnation happening, like what are we doing, and we were like unsure of what we were doing, and so we got him in, and he was like, guys, everybody go in the live room, you just play now.
Yeah.
And like it kind of refocused us, and we were like, oh yeah, this doesn't have to be hard. We could just sit in a room together and play.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, like he kind of refocused us, and it helped us a lot.
Yeah.
For the rest of the album.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we're getting close to wrapping things up here. The one last thing I wanted to ask about real quick is something that comes up a lot on this record, sort of imagery of animals. And I feel like that's a through line through your work, you know, all the way back to the debut record. You know, there's on this album, The Mouse Parade, obviously, there's bunnies, there's dogs, there's all these animals that come up. How does nature inform your songwriting? Obviously, you come from such a beautiful place in Iceland. Like, how does that inform what you put into a record?
I mean, it's like it's a very subconscious thing.
I think so, yeah.
You know, I think like if you grow up in a place where you grow up in a city, and you grow up like hearing those sounds, like that is gonna influence what kind of music you make, and for us, growing up in Iceland and like having all that space and having these like dramatic landscapes, I think it does influence the music quite a lot.
Yeah, and just us as people, I think, like there's the way we are.
And I think it does influence like the duality of things, you know, like there's like these harshness, but there's also the softness, and yeah, there's I think it definitely goes into the music. Right
on. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I'm Gannon. You're listening to The Current. This is Ragnar, Brynjar, and Anna from Of Monsters and Men.
And you're Gannon.
And I'm Gannon. Enjoy the roller coaster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Current is public media made possible thanks to member support.